Hello, this is Mike Van Meter, and welcome to the Recovery is Possible podcast. I want to thank you for joining me, and you can reach us at our Facebook site, which is also called Recovery is Possible, or our website, which is VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com. This podcast exists to educate the public about addiction, remove the stigma associated with addiction, and offer help and support to those suffering from addiction. And so today we are going to be talking with David Nassef, who is the Senior Advisor and Envoy here at Ashley. And I am sitting at Ashley Treatment Center, which is in Havre de Grace, Maryland. And it's a special place for me. I am not only interning here now, this is my second semester in the graduate program that I'm in, but I also was a patient here back in 2012, and so it holds a special place for me. And they were gracious enough to allow me to come back and work on this side of the fence, which has been a very, very good experience. And I really appreciate those folks allowing me to come back here and work at Ashley. So David and I go back a few years, and just wanted to introduce you to him because he has really just a bird's eye view and insight into the history of Ashley, and specifically Father Joseph Martin, who was one of the co-founders of Ashley, and we're going to go into that a bit today. So with that, David, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be here.
Yeah, well, see, David's an early bird. He likes to get up really. What time did you get up today?
4:45.
4:45. Oh, you know what? He hesitated on that because he doesn't want to tell me that he got up at about 3 a.m.
Well, we'll see.
to get here, and so we cut it even here, and it's about 7 a.m. right now. So it's an early morning podcast for me, probably not for you if you're listening. But so Dave, if you would just go through a little bit, tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background, and then how did you come here to Ashley?
Okay, well, again, my name is Dave Nassef. I thank you for being here, Mike, and asking me to do this. I'm a former executive from a company up in Connecticut called Pitney Bowes. I've been in recovery myself personally for 38 plus years. Part of my story in terms of treatment and recovery is the company I worked for back in the mid-1970s is one of the first companies in the United States, at least, that had what you now call an EAP. We had a large manufacturing workforce. We had a large corporate staff workforce. I was drinking every day, but I decided that what the company needed was a program to take care of you people who couldn't hold their liquor or handle their drugs, even though I was in the middle of it myself. So we set that program up. It's still going today in 2001. It was kind of a forerunner for other companies like IBM that set up their own, what we now call EAPs. I eventually got the message myself, and as I said, I got sober in 1983. I went through a personal experience with my then teenage older son, with him having drug problems, and I didn't know what to do about that. And in order to kind of stay sane myself, I got involved with going around and talking to local high schools in Connecticut, both the parents groups and student groups, and sometimes together. And those were different talks, by the way, when you're talking to just the students, because they're more honest and open and candid, and actually, quite frankly, more knowledgeable about what's going on, not only in 1975, but also in 2001. Parents are more into denial, if you will. But anyhow, that's how I kind of got on into this. And then if you're a recovering alcoholic in the state of Connecticut, you're very familiar with High Watch Farm, which I'll get into in a minute. But back in 1989, I was invited to go to a conference in the Soviet Union, Moscow, on addiction. Why I was invited was not because I was myself in recovery, but because of that EAP. It was a 10-day conference. For the first few days were plenary sessions with key people from the states sharing their expertise. And then after that, they put us into different venues. So I spent about a week going to different manufacturing/factories in and around Moscow. At that conference was some very interesting people. A guy by the name of Lou Bantle, who was the CEO of a corporation in Connecticut, and also Father Martin. and this is 1989, he was a very, very iconic figure. He was known throughout the world then, more so than even today, in the field of treatment. He had been a consultant to the United States Navy. They produced a film called Chalk Talk, which even today is being used in most treatment centers. It is probably the best description of alcoholism and recovery for a layperson that you're still going to find. But he was an iconic figure, and I was really surprised. And there were two people, surprised. I was honored to meet him, and that's where I met him, and started a relationship that lasted until he died. I was literally with him a few days before he died, back in the 1980s. But
he passed away in 2003?
2003, yeah.
2003 is when he passed away.
Right. So, but that relationship went from 89 to 2003. Right. I'm sorry about that. So anyhow, and also there were two members of the board of directors of Ashley, including the chairman, Lou Bantle, and another man, Rod Chandler, who was a congressman from the state of Washington, and he was representing President H. Bush. This was a big deal in Moscow at the time. It was literally held in the Kremlin itself. At that session, as I said, I got to meet all of these people. When I came back to the United States, we, about a year later, held a similar conference, invited the Soviets to come to it. And I was very involved in the logistics of that. We actually had the first few days of that session. That conference was in our corporate headquarters in Connecticut. After that, Lou Bantle asked me if I would get involved with this place called High Watch Farm. It was a rehab that's still going, and was actually founded by Bill Wilson and Marty Mann back in 1940. So if you're a recovering alcoholic in that part of the United States, especially up in New England, High Watch Farm was sacred ground. It's interesting, Mike, because today we have 3 representatives of High Watch visiting Ashley. We have a very close relationship with them because this Lou Bantle actually himself got sober at High Watch. He was a big, contributed a lot of funds to a building up there in Connecticut called Bantle Hall. And you and I are sitting right next door to another building here at Ashley called Bantle Hall.
That's right.
It's a whole other, it's an interesting connection. So I did that, and I eventually became the president of that board. And that's where I started to learn, as a layperson, the art and science of treatment. The company then moved me to Washington, D.C., so I stepped down, and then this guy, Lou Bantle, calls me and said, "We want you on the board here at Ashley." And that's when I really started developing a relationship with Father Martin and May Abraham. When I got on the board, and a few years later, I became the chairman of the board. I held that seat for a good 18, 19 years. And then I was honored 3 years ago when I retired from that corporation. I thought I retired. The board of directors at Ashley asked me to be the CEO here for about 2 or 3 years, and to help, if you will, develop the future leadership of Ashley. So use my corporate experience, my recovery experience, and my internal, intimate knowledge of Ashley to help develop the next leadership for Ashley going forward.
Right.
So that's kind of...
It's amazing how God uses all your background and your experiences. And you use your Marine Corps experience,
too. I've been,
experience.
It's funny, when I was sitting in the CEO's office on a Sunday afternoon, I called the former chairman of the board at Pitney Bowes, who was obviously retired himself, and I said, "George, I need to thank you," because he was my mentor in corporate America. And he taught me how to, for example, read a balance sheet like a story instead of like an accountant. I'm kind of getting up, but I learned a lot of corporate disciplines. We're a nonprofit, but as one old timer told me, you know what they call a nonprofit business that doesn't take care of business? I said, what? He said, bankrupt. So, we have, as we sit here today, we're treating over about 400 patients, either in the inpatient or outpatient. We have 300 employees. So there is a lot. You got to have a business sense if you want to stay
There's
around.
There's a lot of moving parts, yeah.
And but then you have to have, obviously, the spiritual side of it. And yes, the leadership, I'll just tell you, as an officer, I was a captain in the Marine Corps, and I went through a lot of leadership training in corporate America. Mm-hmm. I haven't learned one thing I didn't learn. It was all there at 22 years old. So, yeah, I put all of that together. Some people have told me that they think it was divine providence that I had all of these disparate experience, leadership, management, that type of, and recovery myself, put it all together to be a CEO of this institution.
Nothing happens by accident.
Nothing happens by accident, especially in recovery.
That's right.
Especially in recovery, yes. So, so here I am. Now, Ashley is this is a very unique, special place. I'll give you a brief history, and Mike, if you want, you can ask me to embellish upon it. Father Martin was a recovering alcoholic himself. He was a Catholic priest. He was a teacher. He was in an order of Catholic priests that trained other priests. Mm-hmm. That was his specialty. But he was also an alcoholic. He literally was asked to leave that job. He got sober himself in a program outside of Detroit, Michigan, called Gateway. It's a program. It's a 90-day program. It's still going today for clerics, not just priests, ministers, that type. Mm-hmm. And that's where he got sober. And what he learned there, in addition to at that time the normal treatment modalities, 12 steps, that type of thing, is what that taught him was dignity. You have to provide, when you're in a treatment modality, no matter what you're doing with the medicine, with the psychology, with the spirituality, you have to give the alcoholic their dignity.
Yeah.
That's a big component of what then and now.
Yeah.
So he worked actually for the state of Maryland doing alcohol education. One night, he was asked to present this talk he would give called Chalk Talk. Mm-hmm. And it literally stood in front of a blackboard. And again, as I said earlier, explained in very easily understood terms, what is alcohol? What does it do to the brain? What does it do to the body? What is recovery? In very simple terms, but very profound terms. In the audience one night was a woman trying to get sober named May Abraham. And that's where they met. A few months later, Father Martin literally didn't have a place to live because the priesthood still wasn't accepting him back. And he went to spend a long weekend with May and her husband, Tommy, and never left until he died in 2003. May was the person that said, Father, we need to take that dream of yours, because ever since he came back from Gateway, he had this dream of starting his own treatment center. Now, where does he go? He doesn't literally have a nickel to his name. Mm-hmm. But the next thing that happens in the evolutionary story of Ashley is, at one of the nights that he was giving his talk on Chalk Talk, there was a captain from the United States Navy in the room who worked out of the Pentagon. And afterwards, he invited Father Martin to go to the Pentagon. He wanted to introduce him to, I don't know what their jobs were in the Navy, but they were located in the Pentagon, because the Navy was having an issue with drugs and alcohol.
Right.
And they literally convinced him to do two things, Father Martin. That is, you ought to take this talk that you give, and let's put it on film. And we'll produce it. We'll pay for the cost of all of that. And, oh, by the way, we'd like to hire you as a consultant.
No, because when you say film, this was, I believe, the 1970s.
Yes.
So this was on film.
Yes.
just to kind of, by way of background, the Navy had, I know there was a big incident on the USS Forrestal where those that may not remember, there was a missile that was shot off of an airplane that was on the deck, ironically piloted by John McCain. But it killed over 100 sailors, I believe.
Yes.
And so the Navy went and did a study on this, or looked into it, and found out that a significant number of the sailors involved in this had marijuana and other drugs in their system. So that's why the Navy in particular was really, really big into this particular issue.
Right.
But so this is the 1970s that we're talking about.
And I just learned something. I didn't know that was the same incident that John McCain was injured, because
it was his plane.
We'll talk about that later, because you know what happened after that.
So the Navy's really interested in this.
The Navy is very, very more than interested.
Yeah.
They put forth the resources to put this on film, and also to hire Father Martin as a consultant to go around to Navy bases around the world, giving that message of treatment, of recovery. So there's a real connection here. So those two things are happening. Meanwhile, May and Father they've got this dream. How do you actualize this dream? They came across a man by the name of Sam Noble. Mike and I, for your information, are sitting in a building called the Noble Hall.
Noble Hall, yeah.
And it was Sam's wife who was in recovery herself. And she heard Chalk Talk, and she said, Sam, you've got to go meet this guy. Now, Sam was a very, very wealthy industrialist here in the States. By the way, his granddaughter is on the board of directors here, so there's 3 generations of Nobles. And he was very involved in oil and in agriculture, and still is, and had a lot of money, quite frankly. And he told them, what you need to do to actualize your dream is, Father, you need to get on the road and do this Chalk Talk and raise money. If you do that, I will match what you raise. So they did that. He did. And originally, Ashley was going to be located in North Carolina. That's where May came from. Her father was a Baptist minister, but he owned hundreds of acres of land down there, and he donated, I think, 30 acres or so for Ashley. And for 3 years, they set up a board. Sam was the chairman of it. And they were having a hard time raising even more money. But more importantly, the regulatory environment in Carolina was not conducive, especially this land that they were given was located in the Bible Belt of United States. For those of you, for our international friends, that's translated no alcohol. So it's kind of hard to have an alcohol rehab in the Bible Belt. Tommy Abraham, May's husband, became aware of a piece of property here in Havre de Grace, Maryland, literally on the Chesapeake Bay, that was being sold by a senator's family, the Tidings. The Tidings here in Maryland, the state of Maryland, there are 2 generations of senators. And this building that we're sitting in, Mike, was the homestead for this family. And they, for whatever reason, were going to sell it along with about 30, 40 acres. And Tommy became aware of it. They had offers, but Father and May, still with no whole lot of money, nothing going on here, came out and looked at it and wanted to buy it. And the Tidings, and I know this firsthand because Senator Tidings told me this himself, they fell in love with Father Martin and May. They're both very charismatic people. But when they left this property, the family said, they're great people. They got a great dream. They'll be broke in a year. We can't sell to them. But then the Tidings family met Sam Noble. And they said, you know what? If you take these visionary people with this great dream and you put it together with this hard-nosed businessman, I think it'll make it work. And by the way, here we are, 38 years.
We're still sitting here.
We're still sitting here. So off they went. How much of the early history is interesting? For about 3 years. So they opened the doors in this building. There were only 2 buildings on the property at the time. They opened this building for treatment in 1983. They about a half a dozen patients or so, and they literally crawled along for about 3 years. There were times they couldn't meet payroll. There were times that they almost couldn't pay for food for the even 8, 9, 10 patients that they had. But they struggled on and didn't know if they're going to have to close up. And the next significant thing that happens, now the program itself was based on the principles of the 12 steps. The mission of Ashley is to take the science of medicine, the psychology, and the spirituality, compassion. Take those 3 pillars, science, psychology, and spirituality. Those were the 3 pillars in 1983. Those are the 3 pillars today. Mm-hmm. And in the field of somewhere between science and psychology, something was happening here in the States in '86. There was a man by the name of Tversky who was coming up with a concept that you needed to have a separate program in a treatment center dealing with people who were having chronic relapse.
Right.
This was an innovative, new concept that people who were having problems with relapse, continuous relapse, you needed to treat them, you needed to give them something else to deal with the relapse issues. And he came here to visit Father Martin. Again, he wasn't a known figure then. Anybody in the United States that studies at Hazelton, any place that goes back and studies treatment modalities, he is a very known figure.
He's pretty well known now.
He's still well known. He's still required reading. He wrote the textbooks on how you do relapse therapy. But he came here, and Father Martin in May allowed him to use Ashley as if you will, a laboratory, test his theories out. He hadn't written anything yet. And that's what he did. And if you read his biography, he gives credit to Ashley and Father Martin for allowing him to be able to take these theories. I bring this up because that was very significant. And then we were the first treatment center to actually put in a relapse, what they now call relapse track, right? And that's what really spurred Ashley's growth, that we had this program. And things turned around like in 1986, and off we went. But I think, Mike, then and now, it's very important to understand that Ashley, again, science, psychology, spirituality, they're still the 3 pillars. What has evolved since 1983, 1986, at least here at Ashley, is the evolution, thank God, of science and psychology, what we're doing. The spirituality part of it hasn't changed. Nobody has improved on the 12 steps that I know of, okay? The trick, in my opinion, remember, you're talking to a businessman here, not a psychologist himself. The trick is to take in a treatment modality, is to take the spirituality based on the 12 steps and integrate that into what you're doing with the science, what you're doing with the psychology.
That's right. Because the medical assisted treatment, that's really what's come along since the 80s, is the medical assistance part of this. That
is huge. And I'll tell you, and I was part of the, wait a minute, whoa, stop, slow down here, What are you doing here with medicine? Bill Wilson didn't need this kind of thing. However, a lot of old-time people in recovery, I guess I go into that mode. I often tell them, go back and read what Bill Wilson said. The very last speech that Bill Wilson gave in Manhattan, a public speech, and I go ahead and look it up.
Yeah.
He made 2 points. We in Alcoholics Anonymous always have to be open to new ideas in this treatment world.
Yes, he did.
We have to be open to it. And the last thing he said in that speech was, and I want to thank you for your lives. He was talking about the lives of recovering alcoholics, because isn't that what it's all about? The lives that we share our lives with each other, correct? But he was very clear that we need to be open. And in fact, if you read the big book, Old Timers, it's in the beginning of it. He talks about being open to new ideas. So yes, medically assisted treatment. And even here at Ashley, for a while, was like, wait a minute, what is this? Whoa. But when integrated with, again, the spirituality, it works, because even in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about the first thing you got to do with the alcoholic is stabilize them physically. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's ever worked with an alcoholic or a drug addict, especially during those first few weeks, I mean, if you throw the spirit, and Bill Wilson again has said that, if you throw the spirituality out too soon, you got to get their brains slowed down. You got to get them physically able. And so, yes, medically assisted treatment was the first. But I would say there's other things happening in the field today also around, remember I told you, we were one of the first, if not the first, to have a separate track relapse to go along with primary. Well, today, you walk the grounds of Ashley, there's all different groups, right? I mean, society has changed. You have groups for, this was innovative at the time, separate the sexes, men and women. Women have their own group. We have our own women's meditation room right off where Mike and I are sitting today. But men, women, youth, oh my God, younger people, they don't talk the same language. Might be English, but it doesn't sound the same. The message the same, the language. So there's separate track for there's separate track minorities, people of different sexual. So there's
different group. So different group like groups that they can meet in. That are in addition to the actual clinical groups that they're part of.
And the other thing that has really taken off here, and I think others, is not only medically assisted, but being open to other treatment modalities. So if you were at Ashley here 6 years ago, you'd say acupuncture? What? What are you talking about? Aquatherapy? Acupuncture? As I said, yoga? These are all new therapeutic devices that have been integrated into the medication and the whole bit. We have a beautiful, and I don't care whatever your belief it is in a higher power. We have a beautiful chapel here on our campus that Father Martin built, and it's literally on the water. And I remember going in there one morning because the back bay window faces the east, sun rising, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go in there when the sun's rising and coming through that window with the Ashley logo on it, it's quite an experience. I went in there one morning as the sun was rising, and there were two women up on the altar. Now, this is a Christian Catholic altar. On either side of it, they were doing yoga. Interesting, because they were integrating their yoga therapy is their spirituality, correct? Mm-hmm. So there are multiple kinds of treatment modalities that are evolving. And today, here we are, 2001, we are very fortunate here at Ashley. We're only 35 miles or so from Johns Hopkins. And we have Johns Hopkins researchers on our campus today doing research to improve outcomes. In the treatment world, that's how you're measured, right? What is your outcome? Especially if you're dealing with insurance companies. Tell us what your outcomes are. How successful are you? So we have literally professional researchers on our campus doing research in terms of how to improve outcomes. What can you do? What's new? So we're lucky because now we're on the forefront of that, right? I mean, Johns Hopkins is a pretty well-known medical facility, and so we're very and we hope to, in the very near future, actually even grow that research arm of what we're doing with them. So that's a real quick history. Now we've grown from, just so you know, we've grown from that half a dozen of the back in '83, where pre-COVID we had 120 inpatient beds. We're licensed to do 120. But another big thing that we took a turn, recently in our history is about 6-7 years ago, right around after the Affordable Care Act was implemented here in the States, which meant you had to open up, you had to provide services to people who didn't have access, if you will. We were visited here by one of the major hospital chains in the state of Maryland. And they came in, I was at that time chairman, and they said, look, we need to and want to have an intensive outpatient program. We're mandated to provide services, but we also want that. But we don't know a damn thing about it, literally, all right? So we would like you guys to come into our hospital and set up the program. We would outsource to you, to use a corporate word, outsource to Ashley. And by the way, you got 6 months to do it. We want to open the doors. And so we did. It's a hospital right down the road.
Because did Ashley have an outpatient prior to? So this was the beginning of,
this was the beginning,
not only for them, but for Ashley as well.
Right. And to be honest with you, it wasn't on one of our strategic objectives at the time.
Right.
But we were, the hospital came to us and said, look, we have a need, a dire need. You have the skills.
Right.
So let's put those two together. And so we did. We opened the door, I think it was 6.5 months, at Upper Chesapeake Bay. That has gone so well at that hospital setting that we actually had to move across the street with a standalone. The hospital has what they call a crisis center for people having all kinds of mental health problems. And so they gave us space. So we're right there with them. And then about a year or two after that, with the success of that, another hospital on the other end of the state, up almost on the Delaware border, came and said, hey, we want you to open one in ours. And we did. And it actually, in terms of access to clients, it's a different demographic group. These are people who are on state aid, if you will. We call it here in the States Medicaid. We had never administered, if you will, treated Medicaid patients. So this was our first step into there. And that's going well. So if you take the inpatient population that's here this morning, you add it to, especially before COVID, and we can get into COVID in a minute, how we responded to that. But pre-COVID, and now we're getting out of COVID, hopefully, you have well over 400 patients that we're treating on a daily basis. That's the growth there. And we were able, because of now let's go back to the business model. We had, this is critical. I learned this from that chairman of the board that I told you I called on a Sunday afternoon. I learned that from him, because he was very involved in nonprofits himself, that the key to long-term sustainability in a nonprofit, no matter what your mission is that board. Not that they micromanage, but their governance. And this institution, from the very beginning, the board of directors to what we have today, have people who are as committed to the mission as the staff, as Father Martin himself, if you will, to the mission of treating the alcoholic and going one step further. And that is critical, because what does that mean? But they also take care of the business side of it.
We have to.
A lot of people have great ideas. They implement it and then they fall apart. So we have a very good operational foundation that allowed us during COVID to keep going, to not shut our doors, not lay off any employees, not furlough any employees, even though we cut our population by 50% because of the restraints we had with COVID. But we really realized that if you ever, anybody listening comes here, you will see this is a beautiful facility. It is,
yeah.
But I often say to donors, and I often say to alumni, that if we had a tsunami hit this place and wipe out every building we have, we could build again. The key to any program, treatment program that we have, and I think is the staff. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, the connection between the patient and whoever the staff is. And I read on a monthly basis, Mike, we do a patient surveys. It's very detailed. There must be 8 different pages, check the box.
Yeah.
But then they're allowed to write narratives. And let me tell you something. I don't know about you when you left Ashley. They're not afraid to write.
No.
They
can do and will tell you what they think.
They can and do, yes. And I read them all, especially the narratives, right? And it's really, here's the key. Most of the time, a lot of the time, they're talking about the person who gave them the bacon and eggs in the morning.
Yeah.
They're talking about the housekeepers. If you don't buy into that mission, no matter who you are, our patients, and I think any treatment, they actually have more personal contact with the housekeepers.
They do.
The people in the cafeteria, what we call our clinical assistants, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. And they're as important to us accomplishing what we're doing as the counselors. Look, I'm very proud of the counselors we have, etc. But you have to be all in. You have to. You mentioned I was a Marine Corps officer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the PFC's got to be as all in as the colonel, right? They have to be. In fact, they're the ones out there in the front line.
They're the ones doing the work.
So it's the same. I use that same analogy here at Ashley.
And everybody here is so friendly. And if you ever get a chance to come here to Ashley and visit, it really is an amazing experience. As we sit here now, as I'm talking to David, the sun is coming up. Yeah. Just in the short conversation we've had, it's just getting brighter and brighter, and it's just a beautiful place. But everybody here, when you go into the kitchen and you're getting your food, everybody is just so friendly. The people that are cleaning the offices are very, very friendly, and it just is a wonderful place. I mean, it really is. This is a kind of a place that you would go vacation at. But it's a good place to heal.
Let me respond to that 2 ways. One is from a therapeutic point of view. Remember what I said in the beginning, what Father Martin learned and May learned from his experience in treatment. Dignity.
Yes.
So when people drive up here, they say, "Oh my God."
And they're at such a low point in their life when they arrive.
Yeah. Think of the mentality, I'm going to a treatment. They're thinking they got this image and they walk. This looks like a country club.
It does.
By design.
It does, yeah.
Because you know what? The message we're trying to give you from the very beginning, you deserve it.
Right.
Get sober. You deserve this here, So that's a big, big part of the puzzle, if you will. The dignity, that you have that.
And there's stories that float around, and David, you can tell me if this is true or not, but there used to be stories of Father Martin used to sit in the cafeteria over here, and he would meet the patients when they would come in to get food. And I heard that he would say something like this, and correct me if I'm wrong on this. He would say, "Welcome.
Yes.
Your nightmare has ended."
That's where it starts. Yes.
Is that what he would say?
Yes. First of all, especially in early days, they knew people.
They knew who he
coming.
was. Yeah.
He was the one. He was the greeter. If anybody's ever been, he was the greeter. Now, obviously, as we grew, that went out. But he was as much involved in the daily lectures and counseling as any of the counselors. At the end, but that went on. And at the end of his life, he had real health problems, severe health problems, quite frankly, wheelchair-bound health problems. But the last 2-3 years of his life, he would come here at least 3 days a week in the wheelchair. They'd wheel him into the dining room. He would just sit there, and the patients would greet him. Yes,
Now, he would hold court.
And his line was, "Welcome, your nightmare is over."
Yeah.
And the other thing he would say that might be a little controversial here, he would tell the patients 2 things. Number one, your recovery begins when you leave here.
Right.
Begins when you leave here. We will give you the tools to stay sober. You have the choice to use them or not. If you use them, I guarantee you will stay sober. It's on you. That's the controversial part. We have 100. We talked about outcomes, right? The insurance. Well, it's 100% outcome if you use the tools that are given to you here. But the recovery starts. It's not a. So he realized early on what I call day 29, that you can have the best experience in the world in a 28-day program, but it all depends on what you do with what you've learned when you leave here.
Yeah.
Or any treatment program. We now call that in the field the extended care, right? We all realize extended care. including the insurance companies, by the way.
Yeah.
That it's really key.
And there is so much truth about that. And on other episodes of this podcast, we've talked about that right. It's not like you go to treatment and you're healed. Okay. It's not that what treatment, if you've not been to treatment, and if you're listening to this podcast and you're somebody that is suffering right now, and if you're listening to this podcast, it's either yourself or someone, a loved one that is trying to get well. This is work. Recovery is work. Now, you come here to Ashley or any other treatment center for that matter, right. You're being given tools on what to do to stay sober and get well. But the work is there, and it has to be done. Yes. And Father Martin, if you have not seen Chalk Talk, you can get it on YouTube. Yep. I know here at Ashley, you can go to Ashley's website, and you can order copies of it. They have a store here called the Oak Store at Ashley, and you can order copies of Chalk Talk. I have to say, it is the best. There's a lot of documentaries that have been made about addiction, but I think Chalk Talk is by far the best. And by the way, Father Martin, and this is just my opinion, he, in my opinion, was the best public speaker I've ever seen. Forget about the fact that he's talking about recovery. He was just a phenomenal speaker. He was
also a part-time comedian.
He was, yeah.
He really... And he would, in this talk, if you look at, or any talks, he would infuse humor too.
He's hilarious.
Oh my God.
And
he'd have you crying and laughing in the.
He could go from just incredibly serious to make you falling out of your chair laughing in the same sentence, and that was a gift. He was a truly gifted man. Yeah.
Remember, I told you You mentioned about me the different skills that I learned along the way in corporate America and in the Marine Corps. Remember, he was a teacher.
Yes.
He was, I don't want to, as a Catholic priest, his mission, his audience were seminarians, people learning to be priests. So he knew how to get up in front of a group. He was taught about public speaking. Plus, he was a natural comedian anyhow. But every one of his jokes had a meaning.
Yes. They all fit perfectly in the point that he was trying to make.
Yes.
And just unbelievable unbelievably gifted speaker. Yeah.
Some people would say, is it the best? I will tell you this, you should start out with it.
Yeah.
Start out with it. And looking at Chalk Talk, and I've told you the evolution of medicine and science and the whole bit. Tell me if there's anything new that's happened in the last 30 years.
Yeah, and that was the only thing that's changed. I would say that between the times that Chalk Talk was made, which is the mid to late 70s, to now, there will be documentaries out there that will get into more of the specifics of the science. But I really think what he had the gift for and why Chalk Talk has stood the test of time is that when you first come into recovery, like you just mentioned, David, start with Chalk Talk. He gives you probably the best 30,000-foot view as to what is going on, why you need to get in recovery, how your life will get better if you get into recovery, the sort of those general topics. There is no one that does a better job of that. Later in your recovery, like where I'm at now, where you're at now, like the other day, you and I were having a conversation about marijuana and the effects of marijuana.
Yeah, that's the specific.
But you see, those are the types of things that there are other documentaries, other books, other authors that you can look at to get into the specifics. But just as an introduction as to the importance of recovery and how you do it, there was no one better than him.
If nothing else, the part I never forget about Chalk Talk is when he talks about the relation, alcohol, how do you define it? What's it doing to the brain? And he talks about ether, right? He compares, and he literally writes the chemical formula for ether and alcohol, and you go, oh, damn. And I think about that, Mike, every time I'm pumping gas, right? There's that sign, 10% ethyl alcohol, right?
Yeah.
It's right there, and I say, it reminds me I'm an alcoholic because I think about all that ethyl stuff. No wonder I was comatose. No, but he would do that. You say, oh, that's why it's happening to me.
I will tell you, David, in my own life, and we'll wrap up with this. And I have to say that I was exposed to a lot of different things prior to getting sober. And in my case, and sometime we'll talk about my story and your story. But in my story, I was exposed to a lot of things regarding recovery. but nothing was clicking. So I was what you were talking about, that constant relapser. I was that for about 10 years.
Right.
And then finally, so the question is, so what happened? And I have people ask me that all the time. So what happened? It all started here. Right. And it all started with Chalk Talk and Father Martin, because I didn't know who he was.
Right.
Honestly, Ashley, I ended up here because it was the closest place, and my wife liked it because it was close by, and there was a family program, and she liked that. I actually did not know who Father Martin was or the significance of Ashley when I first came here. But when I came here, that was the first time I had somebody explain to me in a way that I could understand what was going on in my brain, the disease model of addiction, how that worked, the progression. Yeah. And I had never heard that before. But that was the beginning of the end of my addiction, was when I came here and I heard him
listen
speak.
to what you said. He was saying back in the late 70s what it does to the brain. That was a new kind of, that's what I'm trying to say. That was something, you talk about innovation. People thought of alcohol. Look, there was, I don't know exactly when, Mike, you could look it up. Alcoholism used to be considered a disease of the liver. Mm-hmm. Today, it's a disease of the brain.
Of the brain.
Right.
That's right.
That's people forget.
It's mental and physical. It is both.
Yes.
It's mental and physical. And so you have to treat both.
Yes.
And it's spiritual.
Right.
So all those, like you say, the three parts have to be mental, physical, spiritual, have to be addressed.
That's right.
They must be. And he was really the first person that drove that home.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a physical malady with a spiritual solution.
Mm-hmm.
So, he was way ahead of his time. And that's why today, I come from Connecticut. There are treatment centers. They still show Chalk Talk at High Wash. They show it at other treatment programs.
The military does.
Yeah. You want me to tell you that quick story?
Yeah, sure.
We'll close. So fast forward many years, I'm living in Washington, D.C., and the Pentagon at the time had a program where they would take business executives and fly them around to different military bases. And it was part of their marketing, right?
Right. Get
these business executives and see what we do, right? And every year they'd go to a different part of the world. I got invited to go on the Mediterranean trip, right? And what they would do is they take you to each Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, right? And let the military show off their new toys. That's basically what it was, okay? Yeah. So they started with the Marine Corps because their officer candidate school is right down the road. It's in Quantico, Virginia. Mm-hmm. So they took me back home. Now, they didn't know. This had nothing to do with addiction, alcoholism, right? This is a marketing tool that the Pentagon was using to acquaint business executives as to what you're getting for your tax dollars. Mm-hmm. So they took them to the Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia. And Marines being Marines, instead of showing them new toys, they took them up to the obstacle course. They showed them martial arts and the obstacle course. Yeah. The Marine officer that was in charge of this exercise was a Marine major. She was a woman, which shows that the Marine Corps has evolved too, right? Yeah. So I'm talking to her and I'm telling her, I was here, in 1967 as a, officer candidate myself, and blah, blah, blah. And so I said, tell me about tell me about your career in the Marine Corps. I was wondering how she got from second lieutenant to major. And she was fairly young, I thought, to be a major, right? So she's telling me, and then one of her last duty stations was in North Carolina at Camp Lejeune, which is a big Marine Corps base on the East Coast. And I said, oh, what'd you do there? She said, I was the drug education officer for the base. Now I'm interested because by the way, I'm here at Ashley, right? I'm on the board of directors at Ashley. I'm a former Marine. I'm interested to know, so how does the Marine Corps do that now? They sure as hell weren't doing it in my day. And she said, we got this film. It's called Chalk Talk. I swear to God. And we show all of it's required. I couldn't wait.
It's required.
It was required. Yeah. I couldn't wait to get back here because Father Martin was still alive. I said, you aren't going to believe this shit. The Marines, he said, of course they,
Did he know?
No. He knew that. See, up until, I think, 6 years or so ago, I can't know the exact date, the Navy owned the rights to that film.
Right.
We didn't. And then I think it was expired after 25 years. No, he didn't know if they were still showing it at Marine Corps bases, but they were then. So.
Wow.
So
that is phenomenal. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I've really enjoyed this
thank
conversation.
You. I hope I've been helpful here.
Oh, this has been just a treat for me. It really has. And as we sit here, and as we mentioned, the sun is coming up, and it's beautiful out here, a beautiful office.
Right.
That's fantastic. So if you're ever in Maryland, Optic Grace, Maryland, which is northeast of Baltimore, come by, visit the campus. I guess that's what I'll term it, is the campus, because it is a beautiful place. It really is. And so with that, folks, as always, I would like to say that I don't represent any group. Although we talk about AA, we talk about different groups. We don't actually represent those groups. We're just talking about the modalities that are used here and in the concepts. So we don't represent anyone other than myself, and the same with Dave. But my purpose in giving this information is to share with you what I've done, because it's helped me and it might help you as well. So if I've said anything that doesn't apply to you or you don't agree with, then just discard it. But try to take any information that you can use for yourself and help others as well, because that's what we do in recovery. We help ourselves along the way, and we help to impart the knowledge we've gained to others with that as well. So with that, please visit our Facebook page, Recovery is Possible, and our website, which is VanMeterWellnessSolutions.com, and let me know how I'm doing, and let me know if there's a topic that you're interested in hearing, because I'd love to hear from you. Take care. And Dave, thank you so much for spending time with us, and we will see all of you next time. Thanks.
Thank you.